And I tell you what, after hearing the backstory, you hear how it comes around. If I'd known they were going to sell him for what they were selling him for, I would have bought that thing. But of course, he probably wouldn't have made the security if I'd have bought him. We were starting some colts for Casey Hinton, and so every year when I go to start colts, I start colts for a bunch of the reiners and cow horse and cutter guys, and so it's kind of fun just to, you get a bunch of colts in and you just kind of go through them, and then after a week or two you have the ones that you really are your favorite, you know, and this one's really good at this one, this one's really good at this one, and there's kind of an overall favorite, and sometimes it stays that way, and sometimes, you know, as they go through the year, you know, they get hurt or they decide that they don't, you know, they don't want to do it, or they kind of hit the wall or whatever. So anyway, that year I picked out a favorite, and I was like, man, that's the deal. And of course, there's a bunch of guys there, you know, interns and assistant trainers and stuff. And so I tell everybody that's my favorite. And he was pretty good. Like, he's pretty talented, not super easy, but you know, pretty gritty and lots of talent. So I told him that's my favorite. So I'm traveling around, go to, you know, a lot of clinics and traveling back and forth. So we would, he'd have somebody wanting to drop a horse off somewhere, pick one up. And so we'd always, you know, have an empty spot and we'd just haul the horse back and forth. And so I'm dropping a horse off or picking up one, I don't remember what it was, at Casey's Hinton's place. And so I'm like, hey, when I show up there, I'm like, hey, how's that favorite of mine? And he's like, well, which one was it? I said, well, I don't remember his name, you know. It's that horse, you know, whatever the one I told you was my favorite that year. So we get to trying to figure out which one it is, and finally we figure it out. And he goes, nah, yeah, he's not doing so good. We don't really like him. So I was like, huh. So anyway, I pull out of the drive with that horse that I'm picking up and taking somewhere, dropping a horse off. I don't remember what it was, but I mean, turning it on to 82, and the phone rings, and another guy that we started a bunch of colts for named Bobby Avila Jr. calls me up, and he goes, hey, I've got a client and he's looking for some prospects. So, you know, get me the list of 2 or 3 for the best colts you've started this year, and if they're for sale, and let me know. And I said, all right. So I did some thinking, and that was one of them. I said, well, I know where one of them is, I think, that I thought was the best. So anyway, we decide that, you know, we get a list of names and horses we think are pretty good, and we send it to him. Well, about, it was 6 or 8 months later, over by his place, and he says, hey, I got one of those colts bought, and he's really good, like really good. And I was like, oh yeah, it happened to be that favorite. And so anyway, he decided that he won a bunch of stuff, and so they decided they were going to have him go, and he wasn't sure if he was going to be able to show him, you know, and as well as he needed to be shown, or have the rep, you know, the recognition to get as much score as he wanted. So the owner ended up sending him to Jason Van Landingham. It ended up being not rough at all. And I tell you what, after hearing the backstory, you hear how it comes around. If I'd known they were going to sell him for what they were selling him for, I would have bought that thing. But of course, he probably wouldn't have made the security if I'd have bought him. But it's just cool seeing how different horses go, and they're, you know, where we end up. And, you know, kind of like us, you know, you never know where you're going to end up after you meet somebody or have a job, and it leads to this thing. And so, yeah, it's always cool seeing how God leads and your life ends up where it's supposed to be. So.
Hope you enjoyed today's episode of Horse Stories on Global Horse Network. We'd like to thank this month's sponsor, Snafflebit Clothing Company, for all your horse and apparel needs. Visit them on the web at snafflebitclothingcompany.com. If you like what we're doing or you don't, make sure that you put it in the comments below, because there's nothing I like better than to aggravate somebody like a sand burr under your saddle pad. Be sure to share our stuff on all the social media platforms, because that's what all the cool kids are doing. Be sure to subscribe if you like what we're doing. If you want to be notified whenever we're posting new content and some kick-ass stuff, click on the notification bell. If you like what we're doing, click the like button. If you hate what we're doing, click that bad boy twice, because there's nothing that I enjoy more than a good hater. And as always, Ride hard, be safe, and have fun.